Awesome.
Yes,
Hi, Jackie. Hi, Pushkar.
Ooh.
you guys doing?
Hello. Okay, so we had a little bit of break and now we are starting again with the panel. Let me just share my screen on shadow AI and governance, agentic AI governance. And I think we're talking a lot about governance, visibility throughout the day today. So, uh, very important, of course. Before we start introducing our panelists, Jackie over here. Jackie, hi. Known him for I think a couple of years, more than that now. Very good friend, Jackie. Want you introduce yourself? He's the director cyber threat management at KPMG US. And over to you, Jackie.
Yeah, thanks, Ankita. Happy to be here, everyone. My name is Jackie Mack. Again, known Ankita for a few years. These days, I help lead KPMG's product security, application security offering, which we all know, these days aligns a lot with AI and agentic security as well. Been in this space for close to 10 years now, and based out of the Bay Area, so happy to be here.
Thank you, Jackie. Nishith, maybe for newer audience, people keep joining and going back and all that. So everyone has a work day. So introduce yourself if you can.
Sure. We'll keep it short. So I lead AI security and AI red teaming at Databricks. Previous to this, I was with AWS and Amazon, leading their AI security functions.
Yeah, so people over here, if you are new, if you didn't join previous sessions, Nishit just did a wonderful session on AI agent identity. So yeah, go back and watch it maybe later. And the next one, Pushkar, you have another session also, so I'm going to introduce again to you again you. But Pushkar is director AI security at Microsoft.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ankita, and happy to be here. Uh, Specifically, you introduced my introduced me already, but what I really do is secure all the products in Microsoft AI. That includes Copilot as well.
We hear about Copilot every day, by the way, so it's going to be an interesting discussion. And by the way, look, I mean, this is an amazing
Oh,
photo.
that's actually a real photo. Some of the sensors are not right. Uh, the agents did hallucinate, but yes, so I work on BCI as well as a passion project since probably 10, 12 years now. So you'll see a lot of BCI rigs in my home. So
Wow, wonderful. Amazing. Thank you. Thanks, Pushkar, Jackie, and Nishit, for joining this conversation. Let's start. I think basic to start with, and the reason I'm starting with this question is because governance can mean lots of things to different people, different teams, and I see governance being used pretty like broadly in every conversation, but it's very hard to sort of define it really, for the larger audience. So for you guys, I'd like to know from you all, Jackie, maybe from you, starting with what does AI governance really actually mean in agentic world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great place to start this conversation, Ankita. When I think about this question, I think back to the journey that we've all been on as security leaders the past few years. For a while, we've been worried about the security of AI assistants. How these tools and platforms were helping us be more efficient, increase developer velocity, and how we secure those aspects of AI. And now we're confronting the issue of AI autonomy. We have to stop thinking about just how we govern data and the predictions that the AI models are making. We have to think about the actions and decisions that these agents are now making. We're all familiar with shadow IT, which for the longest time was how we kind of thought about the issue of some of these AI platforms that were kind of just out there that were being procured and used. But now these are actually agents that are taking actions on their own and making decisions. So, when I talk to my clients, it's less about are these models outputs accurate, but more so, are the actions that these agents are taking, are they safe? Are they authorized? Do you have policies about how they should be used? So, I've had the challenge of kind of convincing a lot of large organizations that this isn't just a theoretical problem. Yeah, governance is a necessity because this is happening now. There's developers at large organizations that are spinning up new agentic workflows that might be connected to, customer data, third-party APIs, and it's, presenting real legitimate risk. So AI governance for me in the agentic world is where we need to think about building a framework for the trust and control, where the software is actually acting on behalf of us and not just assisting us.
Wow. Thank you, Jackie. So AI governance, A, is very critical right now for every organization. B, it all starts with having the answer to shadow AI and visibility, correct?
Yep,
In your opinion. What do
exactly.
what do you think, Nishith, from your perspective, having worked at Amazon also and now Databricks and looking at agent builder applications as for your customers? So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think for the agentic AI world, right? I think it distills down to three things, and Jackie kind of covered it in his intro as well. Who authorized the agent is number one, so the human behind the agent. Number two is what the agent is allowed to do. So this is the blended identity piece that I covered in my last talk as well. So not just the human, but also the agent identity along with it to decide like what the agent is supposed to do. And then I think the third piece that a lot of organizations struggle with, especially at the pace at which AI is going, is if something goes wrong, do we have the ability to stop it? Like, is there an and-on cord that we can pull so that um, if there is an eventuality or a need for doing it, we are not looking at each other figuring out, okay, how do we stop?
Got it. Okay. So that I think very similar to what Jackie mentioned, really boils down to who authorized the agent, what's the agent allowed to do, and do we have ability to control the actions? Correct. And it's also partly what we discussed in an identity session, which is important topic as well. Pushkar, what's your thought there, especially coming from the co-pilot world? Or what's your
A
thought?
lot of thought actually. So definitely, I really want to start with the inventory problem, right? So inventory is really, really crucial to understand what the company owns and what is the shadow AI that's actually interacting with your systems. Because if you don't understand the part of inventory, you'll not be able to have enough guardrails to block those systems inbound, right? That's number one. Number two is about human in the loop. Nishit already touched upon that a little bit already, but essentially there is a very high chance, right, that agent is taking some step actions, right? You want to enable the agents to take the actions, but also make sure that humans are looking at the actions that it is taking in. So human in loops where the actions are unsafe or beyond the recognized patterns, it is really important to have those agents inbound there and humans in place there so they can work in tandem and be more productive.
Mhm.
That's what I really look at, and more evolved controls about what the agents itself are accessing, right? So a least privilege model for what the context of that task is, right? Does it really need to access all the information sets, or it can be scoped and bound to a specific data tier, right? That's like very three key steps that I would look at governance. And obviously, uh, all of encompassing all of this together, right? We need strong audit trails for everything that AI agents do. So
Wow. Thank you. Thanks, Pushkar. So your answer is for governance, you will start with visibility, human in the loop as a second step, and then controls.
yeah,
Controls, and of course, to top it all, some kind of audit logs, to get more visibility.
yep,
That's the governance program in a nutshell. From all three of you, I think I'm hearing similar kind of thing, which is visibility, understanding agent actions, making sure there's control in place for the governance program. All right. So now that you have this, at least definition is established, how do you enforce this? How do you enforce this in environments with especially unclear ownership? And we've talked about ownership quite a bit in the last few hours. Who owns AI security, who owns governance, and all of that. So, important question, maybe Jackie, for you, because you work with lots of organizations as well. Maybe you understand, how everyone is doing. Maybe the answers are different for every organization. What do you think?
Yeah. This is definitely the right question, but a tough question to answer. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that it's no important to acknowledge that you can't enforce what you can't see. So I think, with all of us agreeing on the fact that discovery is the most important first step to take, that is where every organization needs to start. It's discovering and getting visibility to what AI tools and agents are even being used. As much as possible, tackling that shadow AI issue first. That's how we take the first step towards getting some clarity on the ownership. But in general, my thought here is that similar to how we've had the concept of shift left in AppSec product security for years and years now, we need to think about a similar principle for governance here and shifting left the governance of AI agents. Um, as AI, platforms and tools were picking up speed the last few years, I've seen a lot of large organizations whose default answer to governance was, "Hey, let's spin up an AI governance board. Let's get together all these, big wig executives who have very important jobs and make it their responsibility to be accountable to govern AI within a large organization." And as we can all guess, that became a massive bottleneck. It's not realistic and it doesn't provide any actual value. Maybe they need to be informed, but they should not be the ones making decisions about how governance works in some of these large distributed environments. And so when I say shift left the governance, it's about actually shifting governance and accountability to the team that owns the agents. If a marketing team spins up a customer-facing agent, they should be the ones defining the behavior and be accountable for its governance, obviously with the blessing of security. But that starts again with discovery and being able to get visibility. So that's how I think about governance, especially as we get unclear ownership in a lot of large organizations.
Got it. Thank you, Jackie. So I think this is very interesting thought that right now agents are being built by different teams. There's an HR team spinning up agent, marketing team spinning up agents, and whatnot. So the accountability really lies with those teams who are building agents when it comes to governance, right? At least the basic, and then the blessings can be given by the security team, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Maybe Nishith, any thought on this? Do you agree, not agree? What is your opinion?
I've got a slightly different opinion. It's kind of back to your cloud security days, right? Where you allowed software developers to figure out what the policy for their accounts would be. And it didn't turn out to be a success. And then we had a bunch of tools. So I think there needs to be some oversight on top of um, the governance that teams are supposed to do, because quite frankly, some of them don't even know what kind of governance they need. So there needs to be some oversight that security teams have. And because of the scale of AI in enterprises today, this means that you're not going to have hand-to-hand combat. You need automation for it. And guess what? You need automation capabilities even before you define the policies in your governance framework. You can define whatever policy you want. You will never be able to enforce it. And let's say there's an OpenClaw moment. If at that time you're figuring out, okay, what tool do I need so that I can start blocking the DNS resolution for OpenClaw, I think you've lost your battle. So you need to be much more proactive to figure out the capabilities you will need tomorrow from an infrastructure point of view, from a network point of view, from an isolation point of view, and have that toolkit ready. So when there is a moment like OpenClaw, you can act immediately.
Got it. So, be prepared, basically. Have the toolkit ready, be prepared for an open claw moment because that can happen anytime, right? Last month it was open claw, this month is almost ending, but you never know. In today's world, anything can happen. Um, I want to ask Nishith on follow up on this and on the open claw. Um, here we're talking about governance here. We are talking about shadow AI over here, right? When the open claw moment happens, and I think the same question for everyone over here. I am building an AI governance program, let's say in an organization. I am the CISO, and how do as a CISO, how do as an AI security leader, I think about this, having everything ready and then so that the open claw moment happens and I am able to govern it. Or what's the idea?
It's a very hard problem, and probably the thing that exhausts people in AI security the most. And I've been doing this for 3 years, right? Today there's an open claw, tomorrow there'll be something else, third day there'll be something else. Not everything will go viral. Maybe some things will go viral. And then you have limited amount of time to one, understand the technology. What is it trying to do? Like it's new for you. Like you've never seen OpenClaw or whatever the next version is. And then to figure out how can people shoot themselves in the foot with it. And then third, build guardrails or build detections to make sure that they don't do it. Um, and I've had moments where I've done all of these three things in week 1 of the month and done the same thing again in week 3 of the month for some other new tool. And that is why it's very hard for security professionals in AI to just keep up with the space. And it often leads to burnout in our teams.
So it's definitely challenging. I mean, no, I mean you're talking about large organizations, even small organizations like us. We don't know if something like an open claw moment will happen, and how do you sort of deal with it? You're not prepared. So yeah, the idea is to be prepared. Of course, it's a very hard challenge, but like we are living in the world where we need to be prepared. Um, Pushkar, your thought there, coming from an organization which is sort of the pioneer for cybersecurity, right? Which like really has is the leader in cybersecurity. How do you handle firstly clear? How do you handle on the ownership question? What's
I want
what?
to break this problem down a little bit
Yeah,
and be a more prescriptive in a scenario, right? So unclear ownership. I believe that's a little bit overloaded right now. When we actually look at foundation, we have all the data for ownership. There's the identity involved, there's the infrastructure involved, there's the product itself, and the encompassing agent around it, right? So two of the problems that you have, you already have an inventory of these things, right? So you auto tag the ownership to them. If that's not happening, there's form a process, form a program, make it tag, uh, make the product group responsible for it. That's more of an internal factor, how you get around the ownership problem. About the external factors, as Nishith already mentioned, these are more of your external environment signals, right? You will not always know what's going on in the industry, right? You look at those threat vectors, right? You model them into your security policies as a central org, and then attack that specifically, right? In a specific blocking scenario, like a limited governance model, or any other scenarios that you want as organizational policy to be dealt with. So that's how I would approach this problem.
got it. And what's your I guess my question is, at the end of the day, a cybersecurity company or
Mhm.
organization is also an organization, right? Like
Yep.
they are not looking at they would nobody knows the future. Nobody knows a cloud bot moment will happen again or something. How do you
Mhm,
how do
mhm.
you be prepared as a very secure organization like a Microsoft, like the cybersecurity organization?
Faster response times to
Okay.
external factors, right? So that's why we have an amazing amount of people with great knowledge sets which look at external factors and bake them into our security controls across the entire fleet of our inventory.
Got it. So faster response time really correlates to
Really matters. Yep.
Be prepared. Be
Yep.
prepared. Have that toolkit, which was what we were discussing with Nishith over here. So, yeah, I mean, as a large organization, you can't deal with anything other like this if you're not prepared. So, okay. Moving on to the next one, which is what is the minimum viable AI governance baseline? I think we've discussed this quite a bit in the previous question. So I might come back to this again. Let me maybe skip to the other one, to the next one. Should organizations block unapproved agentic AI usage outright or accept that some level of shadow AI is inevitable and focus on containment instead? So uh, yeah, this is very important. We as Acto work with organizations who are very driven, very controlled by compliance, fintech, banking, etc. And then there are organizations who are not sometimes. There are all kinds of security teams, there are all kinds of company cultures. So it's I a lot of times I hear from CISOs that I want to enable my organization to adopt AI without being a blocker, in the AI adoption usage. And then there are other CISOs and who would not, if you're a banking CISO or a financial CISO, you would not be so comfortable in giving that free hand for AI adoption, right? So this differs, at least for me, as I talk to different teams. What's your opinion? Maybe I'll start with somebody else now. Pushkar, you first.
I have a yes and no to this answer, right?
Yeah,
In terms of do I block or do I not block? Absolutely block some things which are very dangerous for the organization, right? And the second subset will be production usage or your production environments, right? They should not have ungoverned shadow AI at all, right? What you really need to make sure that to enable innovation, because there's so much exposure right now, right? People need to make sure that they try out things and like essentially look at different things that are there in the market, right? You need to have a sandbox environment for them, right? That sandbox environment is completely isolated with your production systems, your enterprise IT, and then the people can make sure that they can run it in a safe manner. So do not find navigation ways into the production systems.
got it. So having like a sandbox environment before you can, do
Yeah.
all kinds of experiment in production. So having that kind of
Maybe a labs environment where they can try everything,
yeah,
but
got
which
it.
is very boxed, sandboxed, right? Time bound, right? It has a specific life cycle. When the use is finished, it gets destroyed. So that really helps to make sure that you don't have unnecessary scenarios on your production environment.
Correct. What do you think, Nishith, on this?
Oh, 100% agreed. I think a sandbox environment is like the first step, so that people can start experimenting. I think the next step after that is, hey, this feels useful. I want to try this on my data. And that's where the challenge really comes in. So apart from the sandbox environment, I'd say we need some paved path solutions on, hey, if you need access to sensitive data, here's how you need to do it. So that one, people have some guidance, because a lot of times there are people who are not in engineering functions building these tools and trying to use these agents. I had a use case this week, which is like an HR use case. Someone in HR wanted to use an AI capability. And so I think we as an industry would be failing if we don't provide these paved paths to people who really want to use this technology. And then on top of that, obviously have detective mechanisms to make sure that your paved path controls are actually being followed when it's being implemented. Because a lot of these tools, like I said, are wipe coded and people don't really know what configurations they're putting in these tools.
Got it. So couple of thoughts here. One is a sandbox environment, meaning really like a testing environment. You do any kind of experiment you want to do as teams, HR team, marketing team, sales team. You build your agents, do experiments in a sandbox environment, no problem. So you're, as a security team, you're enabling the organization to, uh, have those kind of experimental mindsets, but at the same time, also helping them with a paved path approach to securing AI.
And
Very
And maybe
interesting.
just wanted to quickly add on the sandbox part of it, right? As you have these sandbox environments, Ankita, what really happens is, right, you can put watchers and sentry on top of it to understand the patterns and behaviors of these shadow systems, right? So when you are looking at it, you understand the threat vectors that are coming outside. So you get better knowledge set what would possibly happen and build better detections on top of it.
Got it. So your experiments are not just experiments, but it's also giving you a lot of data to be prepared for the real
Yes.
world scenario.
Yep.
Jackie, what's your opinion here?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about this. There's, the theoretical right way to answer this, as well as maybe some more practical solutions. I think one concept and one idea that I have to remind myself of, as well as other security and risk practitioners, is that all of our jobs and our roles are in enablement of the broader business. We are there to support it and make sure that the organizations we work for are successful. And so, as much as the security practitioner in me would like to say, we need 100% security, sometimes that is in direct conflict, in contrast with what the right thing for the business is. I've seen in the last few months, like organizations where a application team has spent 6 months building some agentic AI solution, never told security or risk, and then they come and say this is a business imperative for an entire organization, and we need to get it live within a week. And obviously, all of us know that's insane. So that's one extreme, which is we block everything that we don't approve, all these agentic AI usages that we don't accept or are aware of. But I think reality is somewhere in the middle. We need to be proactive and build those paved roads that everybody here is talking about, but approach it with maybe a staged phase approach. It's tough to say that we're going to build those paved roads and have them ready tomorrow. Nobody has time for that, especially if everybody's out there being reactive to, the next open claw. But what I think the right approach is for now, in the meantime, is, taking a risk-based approach. If there is a low-risk agent that's out there, maybe an internal chatbot that has limited access, maybe we're okay with that in the meantime. But then some of these, higher visibility, higher privileged agents that are performing maybe financial transactions, to your point, Ankita, we have very strict controls and block those. So it's not a yes, no type of answer for this question. It's we need to understand the context, what these agents are actually doing, um, and block it as appropriate based on kind of the risk and the value to the business.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. So it's obviously, it really matters what organization you're implementing this in. But it's basically what you're saying is there's a block everything approach. There is a risk-based approach where you understand the risk and you allow it. And there is, of course, not a paved path, but more like a roadmap, or having some kind of a policy framework kind of approach. So very interesting. And there is no, so especially for this question, there is no right answer. I think it really depends on what your risk tolerance as a company is, what maturity you are at. um, from an AI adoption perspective, you could be a company which is maybe like a construction company who's just starting with AI, so maybe they don't have they don't have to take this huge measures of blocking everything, or sometimes you're not regulated by compliance like banks are. So very different kind of approaches depending on the context. Okay. So now, if enterprises could fix just one governance gap related to shadow AI this year, what would deliver the biggest risk reduction? So I think we've talked about it. Maybe let's come back to this question after lots of questions. So what does good AI governance looks like in 2026? So let's talk about this one. This is an interesting one. This is the real reason why I'm asking this is there are lots of teams here in the audience, and I know people will hear this recording later, who are looking for questions like this. I mean, I have conversations with CISOs all the time where they're really asking, what is good AI governance? How do I even go about it? What are those answers to even establish in the company? So, starting with maybe this time, Nishith, first answer from you. What is good governance?
I think inventory, knowing all the things that exist, I think is step one. Then I would go into the identity space. So not having static credentials and having blended identities in place. And then the third thing I would say would be observability. Once you have one and two, like you need um, to know what data your agents accessed on whose behalf. And an area that's very close to me is agent behavior analytics. I know, Ankita, you and I have talked in depth about this. And so having ability to figure out if your agents is doing things across sessions that it's not supposed to do. And so having some form of agent behavior analytics on top of that. So I think if you get all those three things right, I think you're doing AI security well in 2026.
Got it. Nisha, I want to ask you because you're really the expert over here for agent identity, given that session and everything that you've done. I want to understand. So that is, vision for good governance, and I love that. But imagine I, as a CISO, do not know or how to even go about it. Okay, sure, I need agent identity. I need agent data for what agents can access, all of that. How do I start this? How do I build this program, in the in to even begin with the good AI governance? What would your suggestion be?
Yeah, I think the same that we had pre-AI world, right? Don't build your own identity. Don't build your own authentication systems. Use um, vendors that you trust, standards that you trust, standards that have been there for a long time. Don't invent things you don't need here. Um, and I think all vendors, right? All of the hyperscalers, companies like Databricks, Snowflakes, like they all have a version um, of agent identity that you could plug and play. So I think if you're a new company who's starting out and you don't know where to start, just start with a vendor. That's the easiest. Obviously, at a later point, you would want custom features that a vendor is not providing. But by that time, you would also know what good AI identity looks like. And so that you can replicate in your own world, in your own stack, and then move away from the vendor dependence that you've taken on.
Got it. So start with a vendor, meaning it could be a cybersecurity vendor, or it could be something like, a Databricks, which is helping you build agents, but at the same time also giving you that visibility into AI identity, agent
Yeah.
identity. Pushkar, what's your thought there?
I believe there's already a lot of things that we would be accountable for. If you look at the EU AI Act, right, and the NIST AI RMF, the risk management framework that's there,
Hmm.
we are right now bound to develop this into our systems. And we really need the trace auditability, everything that you touched based on. But I would really encourage everyone to go through the NIST AI framework and start baking in these controls, because that is going to be required for audit and compliance, else your products are not going to meet the compliance bar.
Got it. So, frameworks that, you match your organization's, I guess, compliance
Yeah,
requirements.
land of the law essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe NIST for some companies, maybe EU AI framework for some other company. MITRE has some, and there are a bunch of those frameworks. There's OASP also. There's lots of
Yep.
frameworks.
Yep.
So start with that to even think about good AI governance. Jackie, what do you think?
Yeah, when I think about what good AI governance looks like today, the core principles that I try to keep in mind are whether it's automated, if it's integrated, and like I said earlier, if we're actually treating it like a strategic enabler and not just using security as a cost center to kind of block things that, we don't want to happen. Um, so when I say automated, I mean that it should be almost invisible to the end user. We've talked about paved roads and we've talked about how we can't afford to fall back on manual processes because with the speed of AI adoption today, that's not going to keep up. So good AI governance needs to be embedded into the development and operational lifecycle, whether that's in our pipelines or whether it's runtime monitoring. We need to make sure that it's happening consistently and constantly in a way that is not, counterproductive to what the business and our development teams are actually doing. I'm going to reiterate, like I said last time, that it needs to be a risk-based approach, and having that framework in mind is going to be foundational to what good AI governance looks like today. And then finally, I do think that mature organizations today really need to think about AI governance not just as a defensive security and risk conversation, but how do they make that a competitive advantage? If as an organization you have the foundations of enabling AI adoption and agentic adoption much faster than your competitor. In 5, 10 years, it can be so much faster and ahead of them. And so you need to be able to convey the actual business value that faster AI adoption brings with having solid AI governance. So I think that is, really core to what mature organizations are able to do when they have the pieces in place to build that, foundation for AI governance.
Got it. Thank you, Jackie. You mentioned risk-based approach a
Mhm.
couple of times, and I think for the audience, it'll be really good to understand, maybe with an example or something, what that approach would look like in practice.
Yeah, of course. I mentioned this briefly, but not every agent, every workflow is doing the same thing, using the same data, performing the same actions. And so it's important as you build out the inventory of, what is even in our organization. A low risk application or agent might be an internal chatbot that is, only used by a handful of folks and has limited actions that are available to it. But then on the opposite side of the spectrum, we might have an agent that is helping to manage financial transactions and is critical to the business function and the business mission of the organization. And that's where we might implement some human in the loop oversight and management. Um, that being said, I think there's still some baseline requirements we should have, like, to Pushkar's comment earlier, I think auditing is still going to be critical, regardless of if you're a, low risk agent and application or, high risk financial processing application and agent. There needs to be auditing across the board to at least monitor what's going on. But then beyond that, based on, again, the criticality context of these agents, we can apply different sets of controls on top of that.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. Um, okay, I think we had a good set of questions. I'm just going to look at the Q&A. Opening to audience, if anyone has any question over here. Pushkar shared this NIST governance framework PDF. I think I have a question over here, and I was talking to somebody yesterday on just generally AI governance policies and frameworks. NIST is obviously a good place to start with, but to everyone over here, to the speakers, can we talk a little bit more about AI frameworks? Meaning, a how as security team we should think about implementing those, what would fit for my team versus other team. That's one. Second, these frameworks are ever evolving, So how do we evolve our security process with these frameworks? Starting with maybe Pushkar, since you started this framework.
Yeah, I believe, like, in terms of that, right, when I'm looking at the interaction between the systems, right, more and more everything is getting intermingled right now for the right purposes, right? There's nothing wrong about it. However, the underlying problem is data duplication is happening at multiple places due to this, right? And it's becoming more and more difficult, right? As the data would be duplicated, you have to govern it differently. So consolidating those into platforms, right? That will be really good. Data governing platforms, right? Having DLP policies in line for all these data streams as well as at rest, right? So I think I want to pin this at the data problem first and then look at how this can be modeled further, because we thrive to protect the data of the customers, right? And the confidentiality of it. So we want to make sure that this duplications or it's cryptographically bound, or it is making sure that everything is governed through. I would pin this on this data governance problem more.
Data governance. Okay, got it. Nishith, what's your thought there on AI frameworks, AI security frameworks?
Adapt. I think that's my um, one word answer to it. Like, yes, we have these frameworks, but what is actually important to you and for your business? Um, Maybe it's a small subset. Just do that. Um, so just spend a week figuring out what in this framework, on whichever framework you want to choose, is really going to be important before you start implementing. I see a lot of customers that I talk to were like, oh, we started with this framework because someone said it's awesome. And uh, we're getting overwhelmed because this is looking like a 1.5 year project. So what should we do? And I think they made the classical mistake of not analyzing before starting to implement.
Got it. Thank you. Jackie, what is your opinion there?
And this should took the words right out of my mouth. I mean that is definitely the approach that I would take. I get clients that come to me and ask, "Hey, can you do an assessment of my alignment with XYZ framework?" And my question back to them is, Why are you looking for this?" Maybe it's an ask from the board or the CISO to say, "Hey, we're compliant with this framework," but I don't think that actually results in realistic improvements to the way we're securing and governing AI. So it comes down to customizing what is actually important to your organization from those different frameworks. There's a lot of great content out there that, should be used as a foundation for having these conversations. But 100% alignment to these frameworks doesn't mean that you're, 100% secure. So I think the conversation needs to be, based on where your organization sits, what you care about, your risk profile, all these different questions. Think about the question of like, what is most important to you right now, and what are you trying to accomplish? These frameworks are a tool to enable that and to have and start the conversation, but it shouldn't be the end goal. Like the outcome of that should not be 100% compliance with, NIST AI framework.
Thank you. So compliance is not equal to security. It's as the famous debate is.
Exactly.
And to ask that question on compliance with AI governance, right? These are all overlapping topics: AI compliance, AI governance, AI security, and now, I mean, we are also a vendor. We have compliances, so it is important at the end of the day for a business, especially a business perspective, to be compliant, to be compliant with AI policies and all of that. So how do you think AI governance and AI compliance sort of overlap, and how do you think about compliance versus actually ensuring governance and security happen in for AI, Jackie?
Yes, sometimes it can be, almost a carrot and a stick approach. I've seen, compliance being used as that stick to encourage our development and application teams and organizations to become more secure. Hey, we have to comply with XYZ new regulation, to operate as a business. And so obviously it's not something we can ignore. We have to pursue that. But it's a different question than what should we be doing in terms of improving our security and being more proactive about AI governance. And so when I think about the intersection of those two, the conversation is what what is again like the business purpose of all these different activities? What are we trying to pursue? Maybe we're trying to pursue a new certification. Maybe we need to align with the new regulation. Put that on paper and prioritize that against some of the other efforts you're pursuing there. Some of these, have to be achieved and are a requirement for us to continue as a business, but maybe there's some, less urgent but more important proactive security measures we have to take to improve the way we're governing and securing, our internal processes and systems. So they're obviously heavily intertwined, and sometimes, people make the mistake of conflating the two, that compliance is security. But it comes down to understanding the root cause and the kind of where these are coming from, as well as the outcome that we're hoping to achieve with them. Again, maybe it's checking the box and we have to have it for a certain reason, but hopefully for other, parts of the organization, it becomes an enabler of improving the way we're actually securing and governing AI.
Got it. Thank you. Um, Thank you, Jackie, Nishith, Pushkar. Any final thoughts before we end this? Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for this panel. Shadow AI and agentic AI governance is a really important topic, and I think we all are dealing with it in some way or the other. So thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for your insights, Jackie, Nishith, Pushkar. Thank you.